Throughout the books that we're reading this semester, Genre of Power, Leslie Seawright frames her discussion of the police report using Pierre Bourdieu's concept of capital. So in this screencast, I'm going to introduce you to Bourdieu's four types or four levels of capital. So first, why are we using Bourdieu's types of capitals as a framing device? Well, Leslie Seawright explains in the introduction to our text that she specifically examines the ways in which readers use police reports for their own purposes. So those readers are people like attorneys, people like the supervisors of the cops who are writing the police reports, people like judges within the system. So she's examining the ways in which those readers use the police reports for their own purposes and how those readers, again, gain, lose, or redistribute various types of capital in the process. So she's also working to, as she explains, demonstrate that a police report's position of power and that of its writer is determined by individual readers and their own authority or agent position within the larger system and context. So that means that different readers within the system, so the attorneys who are reading it, the supervisors who are reading it, the judges who are reading it, their own authority, their own position within the larger system helps to determine the way that they read the police report, the amount of capital that they assign to it, and to its writer, the individual officer. So I'm back here in the quote. Oops. Different systems and contexts affect or change the power the document holds for each reader. The position, status, and capital of the writer, so the individual officer who's writing the police report then, are at the mercy of various readers and their own interpretations of the text. So for this reason, that the police report itself is assigned a lot of capital by different readers, that is why we are using this concept of capital, Bourdieu's concept of capital, as a framing device in this class. So who was this guy? Who was Pierre Bourdieu? Well, he was a French sociologist who wrote in the structuralist tradition. He was primarily interested in power and in the way that power, so like political power, cultural power, economic power, judicial power. So you see how these are all systems, right? The judicial system, the economic system, political system, how power was exchanged and maintained within these different systems in our society, in contemporary Western society. Bourdieu used the word, capital, to talk about the things that we value in society. So assets of all types. And I think we still kind of use the term like that today. Like we'll say things like, I don't quite have the capital for that. And everybody knows, that's really kind of, you mean the money, right? And in fact, economic capital, so money for goods, right, is a kind of power. That is Bourdieu's first level of capital. Economic capital is his first level of capital. Money, money, money. But there are other levels kind of beyond that are a little bit less material, a little bit less tangible, right? He describes next something he calls cultural capital, which he defines as the accumulated skills and which is an accumulated skills and knowledge, pardon me. That's a knowledge of systems, a knowledge of power, how things are done within a particular setting and system. So, for example, when you first came to John Jay, you had very little cultural capital when it came to John Jay as an institution. Like you didn't know how to get around or where anything was or what those emails about COVID meant that you really needed to go get your COVID test, like how to use Blackboard, how to log into CUNY First, those types of things. But now that you have existed in the system for a semester or more, you have more knowledge on how to do things within the system and therefore more cultural capital. You have more cultural capital now when it comes to CUNY than you did before. And your cultural capital will keep growing the more that you learn about existing and thriving, right, ideally within the system. So cultural capital works the same for whatever social system you're existing in, or professional system that you're existing in. You accumulate it by understanding how to work within the system. Accumulating a lot of cultural capital within a particular system leads to greater social capital, which includes your reputation or your status. As somebody demonstrates more competency within a system, their reputation improves and they garner more social capital, so sort of greater social standing within other members of the system. So, for example, the guy on this slide who looks like he's the chemistry teacher, he has more social capital than his students, right? Like he's probably gone to college and has a degree, which demonstrates cultural capital, knowledge that he's been able to exist within the educational system and pass through it, get good grades, graduate. But it also has to demonstrate, he's demonstrated his cultural capital when it comes to chemistry. Like he has demonstrated by getting that degree that he knows enough about chemistry to qualify for this job, right? That lends him enough social capital for him to be able to apply for the job and to say, I should be this, I should be a high school chemistry teacher. Probably, yeah, these guys look like they're in high school. So finally, those who have a lot of cultural capital often wind up wielding a lot of symbolic capital or control over their environment. So that symbolic capital is control that individuals or organizations exert over situations and people. So exert over the structure that they are existing within. So this guy here looks like he's a college or maybe like a university president, right? You can sort of see it says like Illinois State there. So he has got way more power, way more symbolic capital than anybody else in the system, except for maybe the board of trustees together as a whole, who is kind of his boss. But basically, what this guy is the president of a university system says goes, right? And that's symbolic capital. So I hope this screencast helped you to understand better Bourdieu's concept of capital and its various types, economic capital, cultural capital, social capital, and finally symbolic capital. We'll be using this framework throughout the semester to talk about the police report and its various readers throughout the literacy chain.